We're going to be talking about scandals today, so let's start with a scandal that didn't happen. I've been very hard on CNN from time to time, so it's worth noting that I got one story about them wrong. An accusation that CNN scripted some of the questions at its irresponsible, hate-filled, biased, ignorant, lynch mob-like spewing of anti-gun rhetoric misnamed a town hall was untrue. CNN did not script the questions at its irresponsible, hate-filled, biased, ignorant, lynch mob-like spewing of anti-gun rhetoric misnamed a town hall. That accusation was made by one of the survivors of the shooting in Broward County, Florida, but the boy's father now says that he, the father, omitted a key phrase in an email exchange with CNN, and that throws the story into doubt. So, CNN's irresponsible, hate-filled, biased, ignorant, lynch mob-like spewing of anti-gun rhetoric misnamed a town hall was not scripted, and I regret relaying that false information. It was an act of journalistic malfeasance that reduced me to the level of CNN, although without their malice and irresponsibility. So CNN, I apologize. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
All right, it's mailbag day. Hooray! All your problems will be solved by the end of this show. It's going to be great. Look in the mirror, that schlub you see looking back at you, that guy will not be here, or girl will not be here at the end of the show, because I will answer your questions. The answers are guaranteed 100% correct and will change you from that schlub into something unimaginable. Unimaginable, hopefully in the good sense of that word. Remember, if you want to be in the mailbag, you got to subscribe to the Daily Wire. Come to thedailywire.com and pay us 10 lousy bucks, and we will give you a full month's subscription for a lousy $100. We'll give you the whole year, plus we'll give you the Leftist Tears tumbler. You can try this at home. Take your Leftist Tears tumbler, put it next to you empty as the show begins. By the end of the show, it will be filled with Leftist Tears, which cure all kinds of diseases and skin problems. Some of this I may be making up. I'm not sure. All right. One of the questions I get asked most often is, what the hell is wrong with you people? Why can't you do anything right? And the reason is we didn't use ZipRecruiter when we hired our staff. ZipRecruiter is the way to go if you want to get competent people. That was the word we left out when we were staffing the Daily Wire. ZipRecruiter posts your jobs to over 100 of the web's leading job boards. So with just one click, and then ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invites them to apply. They even review every application to identify the top candidates, so you never miss a great match. And that's why ZipRecruiter is different, because unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. And believe me, the one thing we don't want is the Daily Wire is the right candidates finding us, because we've been hiding from them for years. This is no wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. 80% get their man or woman in one day. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. And now my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That is fairly inexpensive, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. That's ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. One more time, to try it for free, go to ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. You won't even have to spell Klavan, and ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. Today, what I would like to do is read a piece. Joseph Epstein is a good writer, conservative columnist, writes in all the conservative papers, the Weekly Standard, Wall Street Journal. And he wrote a piece yesterday in the op-ed page, on the op-ed page of the Wall Street Journal, that really struck me. And I'm going to read a fairly substantial portion of it. It is worth listening to. And then I want to address some of the stuff he says. It's called "The Only Good Thing About Donald Trump Is All His Policies." And he starts out, "My son Mark, whose mind is more capacious, objective, and generous than mine, nicely formulated the Donald Trump problem for thoughtful conservatives. I approve of almost everything he has done, and I disapprove of almost everything he has said. I second the motion. I approve of the Neil Gorsuch appointment, the moving of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the removal of often strangling regulation from such much commerce, the opening of the Keystone Pipeline, the tax reform law, and more. I disapprove of the bragging tweets, the touchiness, the crude put-downs of anyone who disagrees with him, Little Marco, Insecure Oprah, Sloppy Steve, and the rest. The unrestrained vulgarity. America has had ignorant, corrupt, vain, lazy presidents before, but in Donald Trump, we have the first president who is a genuine bore. In many realms of life, a bore's rude, unmannerly nature can be forgivable. A wise stockbroker who makes his clients lots of money might get away with being a bore. A boorish winning football coach is livable, if not likable. Showbiz has never been without its bores, from George Jessel to Whoopi Goldberg. Even a boorish friend is possible if he's also loyal, generous, and honorable. But a boorish president of the United States presents a problem. The presidency, like the monarchy in England, has a symbolic along with a practical aspect. The president is meant to represent the nation at its best. What precisely that means can vary greatly in a country as wide and differentiated as ours. Dwight David Eisenhower was a different model of our best than was Franklin Roosevelt. Harry Truman was different again, and yet in his own way, he represented the country. The obverse of Donald Trump's presidency for me is that of Barack Obama. To flip my son's formulation, I approved of almost everything Mr. Obama said, and I disapproved of almost everything he did. He made a wretched nuclear deal with Iran, initiated a hopelessly cumbersome health care law, deserted Israel at the United Nations, and did more to exacerbate than to alleviate race relations. Yet, no hint of corruption, no sexual scandal of any sort clings to Mr. Obama, a man who seems a loving husband and a good father. I can easily imagine myself at lunch with Barack Obama, talking baseball, basketball, the University of Chicago, the intricacies of Chicago-style machine politics, whereas I cannot think of a single topic I might take up at a similar meal with Donald Trump. And then he goes on to answer possible objections. Now, I'm going to get to Trump. I will talk about Trump, and some of the things that he says there, I have said. He is a boorish guy. He's rude. I don't like him bullying people. I especially don't like him bullying people who are on his side, like Jeff Sessions, or who might just have a reasonable, honest disagreement with him. But first, we have to talk about Barack Obama. I mean, Epstein is right. There is no sexual scandal about Barack Obama, and as far as I know, good father, good husband. I have no way of knowing what goes on behind closed doors, but if it ain't out there in the open, we have to just respect what we see, and I do respect it. I do think it. One of the things about this sex scandal thing, I was just reading about this because this is one of the things Mona Charen got booed at CPAC for, saying we've been hypocritical in our treatment of sex scandals when we went after Bill Clinton, but now we don't go after Donald Trump for some of the stuff he did. Trump wasn't doing it in the Oval Office, which I think is really important. I never went after Clinton for the sex scandals, except to say what it meant about his character, which I will get to. But one of the things, I was just reading about this. Do you know that the Greeks and the Romans had no word that means morality as we understand it? The Greeks had the word ethikos, which is ethics, and it meant pertaining to character. It was how you tended to behave as a human being. And Cicero translated that into Latin as moralis, but it meant what ethikos meant. It meant pertaining to a person's character. When we started using moralis in English, it began to be used as as you would say, the moral to a story. So it was practical wisdom, like the moral to the story is a stitch in time saves 9. And then they started to say, well, if you had a moral virtue, it would be because you were the kind of person who provided a stitch in time and saved 9. It was very practical. But then it started to come into use as the way we use it as morality. By the 17th century, the 1600s, it meant almost exclusively sexual morality. And one of the things that always puzzles me is why, when we talk about morality, we so quickly go to the way people behave sexually. And I know that I'm loosey-goosey for a conservative on this. It's not that I think any form of sex is great. It's not even that I don't think God disapproves. It's that I don't think it's my business to disapprove of what people do in their private lives. I am not the judge of sin. I know some of you think I am, but I am not the judge of sin. I'm not the old man with the beard living in the clouds. There is one, but it ain't me. And so, I'm always puzzled by this. I really do think when I talk about morality, I'm using it in its classical sense as the nature of character. So let's for a minute just examine this claim that Epstein makes that that no hint of scandal. Is that what he said? No hint of scandal. Yes, no hint of corruption. No hint of corruption touched the Obama administration. To my mind, what we have been seeing unfold that many in the press are calling Russiagate has in fact been Obamagate. It has been the slow discovery of the scandal that racked the Obama administration from top to bottom that Obama and the press deny. Obama just the other day was making that super secret speech to MIT at that sports gathering, and he reiterated this idea that his administration was scandal-free. So let's take a listen to that. This is cut 3.
You can tell when somebody is putting team first. You can tell whether they are prioritizing the efforts of the group and are trying to fit their skills into the success of the group. And I do think that that is a principle that I pay attention to. So one of the things I'm proud of in my administration was the fact that, and I think these things are connected, we didn't have a scandal that embarrassed us. There were mistakes, we'd screw up, but there wasn't anything venal during 8 years, and that's, I know that seems like a low bar.
So there wasn't anything venal. We were all for the team. We may have screwed up from time to time, but there were no scandal. Now, the reason I say Russiagate is really Obamagate is what it has revealed, which is only the final part of this picture of Obama as running a machine-like Democrat government. And we've seen machines. We saw it. I lived in New York at its worst in the 70s. The Democrat machine turned New York into a crime-ridden, corrupt, unlivable city. And then sort of lancing the boil during the Koch administration, every corrupt administrator, there were suicides, there were arrests, every corrupt administrator was cleaned out. That paved the way for Giuliani to come in and clean it out. Detroit, same thing, corruption, a machine. Chicago, we're seeing it now, a corrupt Democrat machine. That was the way that Obama ran the federal government. And so it was, and the thing that gets me about it is it was invisible only because the press didn't cover it. The press, I've played that montage 1,000 times. I'm not going to play it today. But the press just said, oh, it was scandal-free. The administration was scandal-free. And that was part of the scandal. Sometimes when I mention this on Twitter or social media, somebody will come back and say, nobody was indicted under the Obama administration. That was part of the scandal because the Justice Department was so corrupt that it wasn't indicting anybody. Now, first of all, let's just say under this Russia thing, what we've now learned that I think is fair to say, because even the Democrats released their memo and it didn't really contradict this. It said it was contradicting it, but it didn't. The FBI used this Oppo research called the Steele dossier, unvetted, unproved allegations from Russians to this guy, this former British spy Steele, that was paid for as Oppo research by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, used it to get a warrant, a FISA warrant, to spy on an American citizen who had been connected to the Trump campaign. So we know that they were actually spying on the Trump campaign. And Democrats released this memo, said no. But even in the memo, they did not tell the FISA court what this was. They used such convoluted language to describe what it was that they didn't just say, hey, this is something that Hillary Clinton paid for to get at Donald Trump, and we have no proof of it. And there was connections between the Fusion GPS, which hired Steele to get this Russian information, and the State Department and the Justice Department. There were information going back and forth, and Clinton operatives, including Sidney Blumenthal, one of her dirtiest players. Okay, so a Democrat president is having the top law agency spy on a Republican candidate. I mean, that is obscene. It's absurd. It goes way, way, way beyond Watergate. The Clinton Secretary of State, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, she abused the classified information on her email so badly that it had to be investigated. But let's, for just a minute, remember what happened to that investigation, because the Democrats keep saying, well, she wasn't indicted. But remember, Comey came out and made a public statement listing all the indictable things she did. And why did he do it? Comey did it. The head of the FBI did it because he didn't trust the Justice Department. Let's go back and just look at that clip where Comey is asked why he came out and made this public statement, which is something they never do, and why he made the recommendation that she wasn't going to be indicted. But just remember, this is Comey's testimony.
Let me go back, if I can, very briefly, to the decision to publicly go out with your results on the email. Was your decision influenced by the Attorney General's tarmac meeting with the former President Bill Clinton?
Yes, in a ultimately conclusive way. That was the thing that capped it for me, that I had to do something separately to protect the credibility of the investigation, which meant both the FBI and the Justice Department.
Were there other things that contributed to that you can describe in an open session?
There were other things that contributed to that. One significant item I can't. I know the committee's been briefed on. There's been some public accounts of it, which are nonsense, but I understand the committee's been briefed on the classified facts. Probably the only other consideration that I guess I can talk about in an open setting is that at one point the Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me. But that was one of the bricks in the load that led me to conclude I have to step away from the department if we're to close this case credibly.
That's the head of the FBI testifying that he could not trust the Justice Department, that they had rendered themselves incredible or non-credible. So he had to come out and do what he did, which was an extraordinary act. And he listed all the things that were indictable in Hillary Clinton, and then said she shouldn't be indicted because she had no intent, which was not part of the law. And then just remember that that Loretta Lynch, that Peter Strzok, the adulterous FBI agent, and his girlfriend were texting back and forth that Loretta Lynch had already decided that there was going to be no indictment when she met with Clinton. That may have been why she was meeting with Bill Clinton on that tarmac, was to tell him that he was going to be cleared. So whether Comey had told her that, which he testified that he didn't, or whether she just knew it because she wasn't going to do it, according to this text between these two lovebirds, she already knew. The fix was already in. This is an incredible, incredible depth of corruption. But I want to talk about Obama himself, because we're talking about ethicos, right? We're talking about the character of a man, the way the kind of thing he tends to do. And it's not just when we talk about morality. It's not just whether you cheat on your wife. I'm thrilled he didn't cheat on his wife. Good for him. I don't care. It's not my job to take care of Barack Obama's private life or Bill Clinton's or Donald Trump's. He is the president of the United States. He is working for me. I care about his ethicos, his character, and which way he tends to go. Now, I got to go back and look at this. I know this is going back over old stuff, but to me, one of the worst probably the worst presidential scandal of my lifetime is the IRS silencing conservative voices during Obama's reelection campaign. And remember that a lot of the scandal happened then, the cover-up of Benghazi, where the national security agents, the national security advisor, Susan Rice, went on TV 5 times and lied about the reason that our guys were killed in Benghazi, that it was about a video, it wasn't a planned terrorist attack, was to cover up for Barack Obama's claims on the campaign trail that he had decimated al-Qaeda. And that was why Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, big position in that administration, was lying about it, and why Obama himself lied. So all of this was to get himself reelected. Now, the IRS story breaks, and I want to just play what Obama said when it happened. This is the first one. This is cut number 6.
If, in fact, IRS personnel engaged in the kind of practices that have been reported on and were intentionally targeting conservative groups, then that's outrageous, and there's no place for it. They have to be held fully accountable.
Okay, they have to be held fully accountable. It's outrageous. Now, one of the things about Obama is that he was always reacting to the fact, he always was reacting to what he thought the press was going to say, but because the press let him off the hook every single time, he got bolder and bolder and bolder. So that was Obama. Remember that clip, all right? It's outrageous. They have to be held accountable. Now, let's just take a look at Douglas Shulman, who was running the IRS at the time that the targeting took place. They had what was called a BOLO list, which means, it's from a police phrase, be on the lookout, right? So they were looking out for organizations with the word conservative, with the word patriot, with the word Tea Party, and they were holding them up and not giving them the tax-exempt status they need that would allow them to speak during Barack Obama's reelection campaign. So here is Douglas Shulman first goes out and says this never happened. This is cut 7.
There's absolutely no targeting. This is the kind of back and forth that happens when people apply.
Now it comes out that there was, and he knew about it. So Trey Gowdy goes out. I'm only going to play a little bit of this, but this thing goes on forever. Trey Gowdy ripped him to pieces, right? You knew about this BOLO list. What did you do about it? Let's play this little bit of that exchange.
Did you do anything personally to make sure that this insidious, discriminatory practice was stopped? Yes or no?
At the time that I learned about it, I also learned 2 things. The first was that it was being stopped, and the second was that the Inspector
And what did you
General
do to verify that it was stopped?
The responsible deputy of the Internal Revenue Service told me it was being stopped. I had no reason to believe otherwise.
Did you investigate why conservative groups were being targeted?
Excuse me?
Did you investigate? So you can't give me a single name. You can't answer the who. Can you tell me the why? Why were conservative groups? Why was the culture such under your watch that an employee felt comfortable targeting conservative groups? Did you investigate that?
You know, from my reading of the report, I can't tell if it was political motivation or if it was tone deaf, somebody trying to expedite a way to
You still don't know that this was political.
Excuse me?
You still don't know that this was political?
I'd defer to the Inspector General.
Well, I'll tell you this, Mr. Shulman, your predecessor said that he wasn't sure if it was partisan, and that requires the listener to be as stupid as the speaker.
That goes on. I mean, he just rips this guy who knew. He said it didn't happen. It did happen, and then it turned out that he knew it happened. Now, this man, Shulman, visited the White House during the campaign more than anybody else. He was on record, going back and forth into the White House all the time. Bill O'Reilly had Obama on, and he went after him and said, why did this happen? And Obama said, it was just about implementing Obamacare. That's all it was about. And here is this now famous exchange between O'Reilly and Obama where he calls him to account. Remember Obama, this is outrageous. Somebody must be held responsible. We now know that the IRS was lying. We now know they did it. And here's Obama.
What some people are saying is that the IRS was used at a local level in Cincinnati, maybe other places, to go after.
Absolutely wrong.
But how do you know that? Because we still don't know what happened there.
Bill, we do. That's not what happened. Folks have, again, had multiple hearings on this. I mean, these kinds of things keep on surfacing, in part because you and your TV station will promote them.
But when folks actually are unanswered questions,
Bill, when you actually look at the stuff, there have been multiple hearings on it. What happened here is that you've got a 501c4 law that people think is confusing. That the folks did not know how to implement, because it basically says,
so you're saying
if you're involved,
no corruption there at all? No,
that's not what I'm saying. That's actually
no. But I want to know what you're saying. You're the leader of the country. You're saying no corruption.
No.
None.
No. There were some boneheaded decisions. Out of a
but no
office.
Mass corruption.
Not even mass corruption. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Okay.
So that's the polite, gentlemanly Obama, who I admit is a more graceful speaker than Donald Trump, lying his head off. I mean, and when he said, there was a law that they didn't know how to apply, that law has been on the books since I was born. That law was in the books since the 50s, the 19th. I was born in 1782. So, I mean, no, it was on the books for a long, long time. So that is a complete lie, and he's doing it with a smile, and it's all Fox News' fault. It's just because your network promotes these things. And remember, this was talk about ethicos, talk about the nature of his character. This was the way he behaved. Jeremiah Wright, I never heard him say those things. 20 years, 2,000 Sundays in that pulpit, never heard him say it. Bill Ayers, the terrorist, he was just a guy in the neighborhood. Bill Ayers helped start his campaign. And about this politeness, by the way, to his opponents, when the Supreme Court decided that the founders of this country had meant to permit gay marriage in the Constitution when they wrote the Constitution, because it was just, you couldn't see it, but if you held the Constitution up to the light, the right to gay marriage was in there. You just had to hold it just right. It only appeared on certain days. But when they decided that, Barack Obama lit the White House up with a rainbow. Now, I have no problem with him supporting that position, right? He has the right to support any position he so chooses. But that was saying to 50% of the country who very much held that to be a held the wrongness of that decision to be a principle. That was telling them this White House doesn't belong to you. This White House is no longer white. This is a rainbow White House. It doesn't belong to you. Now, even if you agree with him, even if you agree with the Supreme Court, that's a rude, nasty, mean, stupid, un-American thing to do. And that was part of Barack Obama's character, too. He was a master troll, just like the guy who followed him, just like Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to end by, I went a little long on this because it's so, it bears remembering. I know he's not president anymore, but remember the press said this thing was scandal-free. Joseph Epstein is in the Wall Street Journal saying it's scandal-free. Obama in that speech is not only saying it's scandal-free, he's telling Google and Facebook to change their algorithms so you can't find all those nasty Fox News reports about just how scandalous it was. So he wants the silence to continue. He wants to write it into history as much as possible and obliterate the facts as much as possible. Trump is a bore. Epstein's right. He is a bore. And more than that, on the issue of ethicos, the nature of his character, I don't think it's all that good. I mean, the way he has treated his wives, his many wives and his mistresses, some of his business practices, that bullying treatment, which really is real, the way he treated the candidates he was up against, he was mean, it was low. This does speak to character. It's more than just boorishness, I think. Now, on the other side of that, the Heritage Foundation, a rock-solid conservative organization, has released a report saying that with unprecedented speed, the Trump administration has already implemented nearly 2/3 of the 334 agenda items called for by the Heritage Foundation, a pace faster than former President Reagan, who embraced the conservative think tank's mandate for leadership blueprint. They're just absolutely delighted with the way that Trump has acted. And remember, Trump hasn't done anything. His talk is extreme, but everything he's done has been just typical Republican governance, and that the Republicans don't do. Typical conservative Republican governance. So it's entirely possible that a man whose character is questionable or has been questionable in the past is doing good things for the country. And that is disturbing. I mean, that does carry with it a moral hazard. It means that we have to follow Donald Trump in what he is doing just as far as we can. Because I'm not a pearl clutcher. I don't care if he cheated on his wives. I really don't. I think it's a rotten, low thing to do. I think it does speak to your character to treat your wives like that. But it's none of my business. It's not something he did in the White House, first of all. And second of all, it's not what I hired him to do. If you're a heart surgeon and you're cheating on your wife, I don't care. Just fix my damn heart, So, but it does mean that if we follow the man, and not the principle, if we follow the man and not the politics, if we follow the man and not the policy, we could follow him right off a cliff. And recently, I've been a little worried about Donald Trump when he starts talking about gun control. And yeah, don't worry, we'll stand up to the NRA, who supported him so powerfully during his election, when he starts passing a budget that plunges us into trillions of dollars into $1 trillion of debt. I worry that he's going to go back to his Democrat roots. I think you and I have to keep our heads and keep our hearts. We have to keep hold of our hearts and not just follow the guy off the cliff if that's the way he goes. For right now, I'm not clutching my pearls. I don't care, what he is. But don't forget, Epstein is right at least about this, that a guy whose character is questionable doing great things does present a problem. I'm not going to surrender the present victories for a possible wrong turn in the future. That would be nuts. But I am going to keep hold of my heart and not necessarily follow him wherever he goes. All right, the mailbag is coming up, but I got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube. Come on over to thedailywire.com. You can hear the rest of the show while you're there. You know what would be a good idea? Subscribe to the website. Then you can watch the whole thing right there. And if you subscribe for a year for a lousy $100, you get the magical Leftist Tears tumbler, which does it's insane. It was empty when I started, and now, Leftist Tears. All right.